All right, here we are. Got some mad energy up in here this morning. And we're going to talk about how to basically go get stuff for yourself, which is a really, essentially it's the most important thing. The most important element of learning is how do I go get for myself? Think about if you were a kid and your parents weren't around and you didn't know how to make yourself a sandwich, you'd starve. Just keep that mentality in your mind when I start talking about what I'm about to talk about. Because what we are about to talk about is it's the most important part of performance, and you can see it as planning, and you can see it as how do I learn something? And the reason why I brought this up was not only to kind of really sort of pull from every lesson before we do a review thing. It's not really a review, it's just kind of what can you pick and choose from to have in your tool belt, keyword tool belt, to perform. And most people think of performing as getting on stage and doing cool stuff. Bang, I'm on stage, I'm doing cool stuff. When you see somebody at the Grammys on TV, here's a good one. If you think about Aguilera or Swift or Spears or these pop dancers where they have dancers and choreography, and you have to be here because the pyro's going off. In a sense, I think I have respect for those kinds of artists more than just the regular folky guitar hero that sings really good music and just stands there, because of the amount of preparation that actually goes into what these people do. You gotta respect them for it. You may think that they were just handed this success. So Taylor Swift just kind of came out of nowhere and was handed all this success. When really and truthfully, if you meet anybody that's been to one of their rehearsals, I know a guy that was at Lady Gaga's Grammy rehearsal a couple of years ago, an A&R guy that was just there working, and he said you could hear a pin drop, and there's 20 dancers on stage, Lady Gaga's there's a whole band, there's the sound, there's the lights, there's the pyro, there's all this stuff, and there wasn't a single word being said. That's how detrimental preparation is to their performance. So how does that apply to us as musicians and as guitarists that don't have light shows and explosions and 20 backup dancers? Well, for us, and I can tell you from experience, it's all about transcribing, preparation, and the ability to find stuff for yourself. Okay, so when I do jam chats, a lot of times I can understand why, but I probably come off as sort of sarcastic when somebody asks me, how do I play this song? And I say, okay, let's go to Google, let's go to YouTube. And they go, what? Come on, don't be sarcastic. Well, I'm not. This is my process and my checklist for how to learn something and be able to have the confidence to get on stage, basically plan your work and work your plan. Another boxing terminology, plan your work your plan. All right, so let's take a look. And using our backing tracks from our progression bank, we're going to pick a couple of these, and we're going to pretend like we don't know how to play them, like there are not charts provided for us, and we're going to go after it ourselves with this quick little kind of checklist thing here too. So let's do one with, there it is. The root notes are in there. I want to take one that's got a little bit of major, a little bit of minor, so on and so forth. And I think that example 4, we'll do example 4 and we'll do example 5. There's
Sorry,
example 4.
which session is example 4 and 5 from? So
Okay, so this is from the second lesson, which is the progression bank.
Okay, it will take me a second to get those up.
Oh, sure. All right. Feeling good. How are y'all doing this morning?
Which example did you say? 2 and 3?
That is going to be 4 and 5. And by the way, this session, feel free to ask any questions because this is a very important thing. Remember.
Okay. So while I'm setting those tabs up, just so everyone can have them, we do have a question. So why don't we just answer that while I get the tab up? It's from Patrick419. I'll just let you read this while I get that set up.
When learning, practicing a piece, this is great. Should I make a cognizant, big words, effort and include as a major part of practicing myself? Not to look at the fretboard while playing. Would this habit be beneficial in the long term, or would you do so just a waste of time, or should I just let it come naturally as I become more familiar with the piece? Keep it in the back of your mind. Keep it in the back of your mind, and I say it'll happen naturally, but just make sure that in the back of your mind it's a goal that like maybe a short-term goal that's in the back of your mind at all times. I think that this comes with performance. This is very relevant to what we're talking about. Eye contact is a big confidence thing. When you are playing something and you're confident, it shows in your body and it shows. I mean, if you're looking at the ground or you're looking at your fretboard, people are going to sense that you're not the most confident. That's just life. It's how it is. It's the same thing as, I mean, think about it. If you've ever gone and applied for a job, you're going to want to have a strong handshake. You're going to want to have the eye contact. And when you talk to the person that is going to hire you, you're going to want to install in them confidence that, they're talking to the right person. This stuff, believe it or not, of all the things you see on Facebook or all this about how the music industry is this or that, really and truly, the reason why a lot of people have a hard time in music is because they don't approach the business end of it like you would approach a job that pays you and feeds your family. Most people that have music as a job approach it from a business perspective in that manner. They write emails, they show up on time. Believe it or not, you wouldn't believe how many musicians just kind of show up when they show up because that's kind of the nature of the beast. Well, guess what? In the real world, that doesn't necessarily apply. So back to the question, I do think eye contact with the audience is essential. And I don't think that it's a waste of time. It should be in the back of your mind. But yeah, it'll come naturally. And I fully believe that this list that we're about to kind of go through is going to help you be free of thought, have more muscle memory, and actually be able to, and that'll free you up to actually be able to move around and put on a show. Because there is a few elements to performance. There is the element of playing the actual music, and then there's the element of performing the music with your, putting on a show, like not just standing there and looking at your fretboard. So I wouldn't say it's a useless thing to try to do, but I think it comes naturally if you do your homework and you are very well prepared. Okay? All right, so
We do have these tabs up now.
And there we go. Okay. So there are the actual chords, and notice that it's in first position. But I want to just, it's there if you need it. But what I want to do is break this down a piece at a time and show you guys how I would actually approach learning. Let's just say for now, example 4 from lesson 2 from our or from our progression bank. Okay. So the first thing that I do, which is really important, and this is I write out the form before I do anything. And keyword write out. When you take a notebook, a fresh notebook, and you write a list from top to bottom, verse 1, pre-chorus 1, chorus 1, verse 2, pre-chorus 2, chorus 2, so on and so forth. When you handwrite it, it can be sloppy, For some reason, when you handwrite something, it solidifies your thoughts. I'm not that old school when it comes to making lists. When I do like a day-to-day thing, I'll use my iPhone and just use notes and just make like a day list. But if I am buried in my thoughts, battling analysis paralysis, I've got to email this guy, I've got to do this, which one do I do first because I want to make sure this is done before that, all this stuff. Well, when I'm in that mode, I take a simple notepad and I just slop down a basic list of everything that needs to be done. It doesn't really matter the order that it is. That's the mentality you want to have when you're transcribing, because you're going to use this as a guide to actually write notes, because the first verse may be this way and the second verse may be a little embellished to where you're going to need to be able to write that note. The notes that you would write in this list are little tablature notes, a little tiny tablature note where you would actually sort of even transcribe like, I would actually write that down with no rhythm, real sloppy, just right there. So the work is kind of done and my mind is free to move to the next part of the list. Okay. If the first verse, by the way, is the same as the second verse, guess what? You get to mark off the first and the second verse. That right there is potentially 15% of the song. All right. So we're building confidence here. It seems like an endless task. But then once we start making that list and start writing, just marking stuff off, just like life, all of a sudden the intimidation factor is brought down and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I can do this. Of course I can do this. I'm a professional. Why was I doubting myself in the first place? Okay. So that's the first thing that we do. We're writing down the chords, or not the chords, but the song form. Verse, chorus, however you want to do it. Just make sure you're thorough. And before you sit down and start trying to learn the song, complete this list. Bridge. If there's 3 or 4 sections in the bridge section, bridge A, bridge B, bridge C, bridge D. If you want to get really detailed, which I don't really think you need to, but let's just say there's a tag where the last part of the chorus kind of repeats itself 3 times before it moves on to another part. Well, then write tag 3x, you know? Write verse 2x, second verse 4x. This is a very abbreviated form, and this is going to keep us on track and allow for us not to be consumed by our own thoughts because we're human beings. All right, so on to the actual list. Number 1, find the root notes. This is the majority of the work right here, finding the root notes. Okay, so we're going to bring this up. Example 4. And okay, right there, I'm stopping. Okay, I found that root note. There it is. I write it down. If tab is your world, tab it out. If you know notation, that's an A note. Okay, and then I heard this, and then we're gonna notate that too. Then we're gonna go back and make sure we're correct. Okay, now we're stopping. So I have this. I use this example because there's a guitar just playing the root notes anyway, so it kind of makes things simple for all of us. But that is essentially what we're doing. We found the root notes now, and we want to commit that to memory. And then we simply, if you think you can tackle all of it right now and knock this whole section out, we'll do that. But let's just say that you're kind of hung up on the chords. What chords are those? He's using kind of a weird chord. I think it's a minor thing. I can't really tell. Well, if you can't tell, write down the root notes and move on, because the idea, it's kind of like, I would imagine, like football. You're running with the ball. Like the goal is to get to the finish line, not really analyzing what to do on the 20-yard line. You're analyzing, do whatever you got to do to get to the end zone, right? And that's what we're doing. So once again, get the root notes down, and if you hear the chords and you feel the confidence that you can tackle those right now, do it. If not, move on. Make it to the end zone. Go to the next section. Go to the chorus and find those root notes, okay? So let's make believe that 4 and 5 are a whole song. Let's say that that's the verse and this is the chorus. Here's example 5. Okay. Okay. So to me, it sounds like it's a E, a G, a C, and an open A. And having no shame, let's just say that we're more ambitious and we don't have a very strong background in music theory. You know what? Hey, open 0. Okay, on the E string 3, on the A string 3, on the A string 0. And then you know what? We're going to write that down and we're going to move on. Stick and move, okay? Now, that is number 1. We found our root notes, and now we are ready to get deeper and figure out exactly what's going on with the rest of the chords, basically, because we have the roots. So this is where a little bit of music theory comes in, and I want everybody to remember what I say here, because this little saying is something you should tell yourself every day, which is that there are 3 chord families. There are 3 chord families. There are major, minor, and dominant. Okay? What's diminished, Emil? What's augmented? Dominant. Anything that's weird and sounds tense is dominant. Major's major, minor's minor. Now, when you get into complex chords or complex harmony, which is a 4-part harmony, which is like, say, for example, C major 7, sometimes you can easily confuse this sound. You can easily confuse that with minor, right? Which is the reason why is because there is a minor chord inside of that major chord, but it's still a major chord. But with time, when you understand that extended harmony is 4-part harmony, you start hearing major 7, minor 7, dominant 7. Dominant's kind of easy to hear, but with major and minor 7, over time, when you start hearing these chords, you're going to get used to them just like you would the regular major triads and minor triads. Think about it. When you first started playing it wasn't the easiest to be like, that's major, that's minor. But over time, when you hear a G major in some Leonard Skinner song or that Poison ballad on the radio, you go, that's a G major chord. I know that chord is G major. So essentially, or not essentially, eventually, you will be able to hear your way through the extended harmony chords if you get into that world, you know. So moving on, find the chord tones. Or actually, that kind of a correction with that. What I meant instead of chord tones is find the tone of the chord, find the family the chord belongs to. We've talking about yesterday when I was being silly and talking about a multiple choice test. When you have is the answer A, B, C, or D, you have a 25% chance of guessing if you don't know it. Okay, so it's not like a total bust. But if you had A through Z for the answer, then your percentage drastically decreases and you're going to have a harder time guessing and getting it right. So the way that we can bust this down into a multiple choice where there are very few options, where it has to be one of the three, is very simple. It's the chord families, major, minor, or dominant. So let's pretend like we don't know these chords. We don't know these chords at all. And we're going back to example 4. Because on our sheet, we've noticed that we have the root notes for the verse and the root notes for the chorus. Example 4 and example 5, making believe. And then I play this. Stopping it. Let's play that again. I may, when I'm learning something, I may do this up to 20 times. Let's see. We may not know what that is. What is that? I can kind of tell. It sounds minor to me. Okay? And it is minor, as we know, but let's say I can't figure it out. What is that? Well, then I'm going to go and put headphones on, and I'm going to listen to it and play it over and over again and go, what is that? Let's say I can't figure it out. I'm going to go into the other room and play it on my stereo system and listen to it from the other room and see if I can actually hear through the wall, because that's actually a really good transcribing trick, by the way. Go into the other room and play it on the stereo in the other room. You're in the other room listening through the wall, and you go, okay. Right? I can hear it. Because a lot of times when you're transcribing a song, there's drums on the recording that are really making it hard for you to hear exactly what the guitar is doing. But here we can kind of tell that that's minor. To me, that sounds minor. So guess what? We have deconstructed by learning the root, and now we know that it's minor. So if we have the root A, then we know that it's A minor. So we go back to our list and we write down A minor. Okay, sounds right to me. Moving on. That sounds the opposite of what we just did. So that's got to be major. Could be dominant, but I think it's major. It sounds real normal. We listen to that over and over and over again as a small fragment, and we go, okay, it's major. So, I'm playing A minor, or I can do A minor here. I'm usually going to go for open chords first. Okay? It could be here, but there's no telling. We're going to worry about that later because we're going to actually craft how we play this riff after we learn it. So coming up here, I hear C, major. How do I know that? Well, because I have the root note. The root note is C, and then we just apply the rest of the chord on top of that root note. Right? Same thing. And that is how I go through and find... That's how I find out how to play things in a basic form. Even if it's something that is a bit riffy and played a certain way, a lot of times riffs are based around chords. So if it's a riff, then what you can usually do is find the root notes, maybe even find the chords it's based around, and then that's going to narrow it down to where the riff is more in your, within your reach. You can hear it, you can kind of feel it, you think you have the confidence, but for the most part, you definitely have the root notes. It works. So you move on, you mark that off the list, you've got it written down now. Now you make yourself a quick little chord chart. If you're playing, like, say, a Tom Petty song, which isn't far from these chords, at this point, you would use a pencil, by the way, or just get sloppy and use a pen, but you erase this and you literally write out your chord chart, right to the side of verse 1, A minor, C major, D minor, F major, and put a little repeat sign there. And then you move on, okay? You've got that. Guess what? Oh, look, verse 2 is just like verse 1. Well, bam, you now have this part transcribed. It does take hard work. It does take devotion, and you are going to want to put the guitar down and not do this, especially when you have like 20 songs to learn. And then you look at the task and go, man, can I even do this? Of course you can. when you see a task at hand, it looks like a mountain of impossible. But as soon as you start chipping away at that stone, you realize, I did this much in 20 minutes. It felt like 2 hours, but it was really 20 minutes. And then you realize this is possible. You get the confidence, you move on. So moving on to example 3. I kind of talked about this earlier on. Use paper and pencil only. We don't really need to go through that again. Why? Well, I think there's more attachment to something when you put more effort into it. For an example, even if I write a solo for a song and it's not the right thing to do and I put all this work in there, just because I'm human, I'm kind of married to that idea. I spent 6 hours on that solo. Don't tell me you're going to cut that out of my song when you're talking to the producer or something like that. The producer goes, Emil, you have a vocalist. You're not the only person in the band. You have to kind of have a vocal there. You can't have a solo and a vocal at the same time. And I go, oh man, but I worked 6 hours in this thing. What do you mean you're just going to delete it? Well, guess what? That is the nature of the beast when it comes to creating media. Sometimes you make the wrong decision and you can do a really good job at making the wrong decision. You can create an amazing solo. Like, what if they create a Hotel California solo, but they put it for the first verse instead of the solo? Well, there's 2 options. Move that somewhere or get rid of it so you can actually move on. A lot of times people get stuck when they write or they're trying to learn something to perform it because they kind of make the mistake of working on the wrong thing and they can't get past that. They get married to it and they analyze that, so they can't really see the rest of the big picture. When you handwrite something, you're putting the effort in and it is marrying you to the task. You are now concerned about not undoing all of your hard work. For some reason, when I can, and I'm a fast typer, so when I rip something on the keyboard or I type something on the iPhone, I mean, I may or may not abide by it because on my laptop I have 20 other things open. You know, I have my email open. Oh, there's an email. Let's ignore what I'm doing and go check my email now. It's all about tricking yourself into becoming just a really devoted person to the task. Okay, so handwrite it. You know, you don't have to do it sloppy either. Write it nice and neat and in big letters. You know, and that's what I do, and it seems to work better for me. Okay, now. This is the most important part, and I do want to talk about this, and this is one of my secret weapons, and I've shared this on Jam Chat as well. It's funny how back when the internet first was kind of in its growing phases, we'll call it, before social media, we were actually just talking about Prodigy before this started up. For all you older cats out there, Prodigy, message boards, aliens. Man, I saw one. I saw aliens, Secret Service. Remember all that? Well, what you're going to want to do is understand that the same way, you know, as a matter of fact, we had a technical thing happen right before we played. It was a small thing, and instead of wasting a block, once we got to about 5 minutes of, man, how do I do this? We got on Google, bang, it was figured out right then and there, because 9 times out of 10, we're all human, and somebody else has encountered the same thing, especially when there's a product involved or a process, and this is a process. So when you ask me how do I learn something, my number one thing aside from this list is I go, okay, we're going to go to Google and YouTube and we're going to find out for ourselves. We're going to get as close to we can as the source, or to the source as we possibly can. Now, back in the day when the internet was maturing, there were tabs. Remember Olga and Harmony Central and all these things? You would have slews of just a huge chunk of just tab for songs that like a 12-year-old kid did, where he tabbed out incorrectly just the verse, and that's what's up there. So you go learn it, it's wrong. What do? I don't know, you give up. Sometimes you find accurate tabs, you know, but for the most part back then there was no moderation. There was it wasn't an outlet for a musician to make a living either, so musicians didn't get heavily involved in editing the tabs for companies. They just kind of, yeah, there it is. So free reign. Everything was wrong. Well, now, interestingly enough, we can get on YouTube, and here's the kicker. Let's say I want to learn Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd, okay? And I go to YouTube, and the first thing I'm going to do is, while I'm transcribing, if I can't figure out exactly what's going on, I go for the crappy amateur footage on a cell phone. Let's say that it's a more modern band, and there's a person in the front row with their cell phone on the guitarist. The audio sounds like crap, but all you can hear is the guitar. Bing, bing, bing. All you can hear is the guitar. It sounds bad, but you can hear and see every note this guy's playing because there's a dude standing in front of him with a cell phone in his face. That is exactly what you go for. And right then and there, it's showing you, not from secondhand information from Harmony Central or something from back in the day, but it's showing you directly to the source, from the source, this is how that guy plays that riff. Even if you can't see very much going on, I look at where the guy's hand is. Is he playing the chords up here on the neck, or is he playing it down here on the neck? And right then and there, it spells it all out for you. And then you focus back on your list and you go, okay, there's that verse. Amol is playing, I know he's playing A minor. I know he's playing C major. I know he's playing D minor, and I know he's playing F. But where is he playing it? Then you watch me on YouTube, you watch me performing, you can't see me very well, but I turn around and right there in front of your face is me playing that riff, but I'm in this area. I'm in the 5th position. So then we adjust. We go back to our list and we go, okay, we can either hit it right there if we have the confidence, or we can just make a note for ourselves. And what I would do if it was a note, I would say, I'm going to, move chords up to 5th position. Find chords in 5th position. This is going to build your efficiency as a guitar player. When you go, okay, I already learned this, A minor, C major, D minor, F major. Now I got to find voicings up on the 5th fret. Or how about he's playing those chords, Jimi Hendrix is playing those dominant chords up near the 12th fret. You're basically narrowing down your possibilities and changing the entire alphabet into a multiple choice test of A, B, C, and D. So you have like a 25 percentile to figure out what's going on. Okay, so use YouTube as much as you possibly can to see the artist play it, and you will be in business. Is there any questions so far?
Yeah, we have some questions. They're not necessarily 100% about exactly what you're doing, so I didn't know if you wanted to answer it now or wait until this segment was done.
Let's see. Let's do 1 or 2 now, and I'll try to pull some answers out of people.
Okay. Well, we have a big one here. Let me bring it up real quick. This is a longer one, so I'm just not going to read the whole thing out. I'll let you just read it, and you can either vocalize it or not.
Look at that. Okay. Emil, I had a friend who was a music professor. I told him that I have my own way of writing down stuff just for me, for complex songs, just for jamming. I also used to write notes to songs I figured out and wrote my own notes. Yeah, this is a pretty good one, yeah. The way I know notation may be wrong to others, but worked for me. The music professor said a lot of musicians do that their own personal way for writing songs for memory. What do you think? That is pretty relevant, and I've experienced that myself. Drummers are very capable of this, where, we're essentially talking about kind of I like to call it jacklegged, where you're sort of just like, oh, you're just kind of throwing together a list. It may not be like the protocol of a professor that goes to college, but it's your kind of way of sort of, like throwing it onto a list and keep it moving. So to answer your question, I would say that if it helps you make progress, then more power to you. But do understand that it is a language. Music is a language, and you can't expect somebody to go in and learn your language. Like, for example, if you go to a border town, you may find, like, for example, there's some towns in Texas where people don't speak clear English or clear Spanish. They kind of do a combination of both, right? So that's sort of what you're talking about, where you can go there and you can make out and understand what they're talking about if you talk one or the other, but it's kind of, there's a lot of slang terminology. You know what I'm saying? So look at what you're doing as slang terminology, and remember, if it works for you, cool, but understand that the reason why we established this language is to be able to communicate quickly. When I look at you and say 1-4-5 in the key of A major, then you're going to know what I'm talking about if you know that language. But if I look at you and say, do the thingy on the thingy and then go to the other thingy and then the 5th fret thingy, you're going to be like, well, what the hell is this guy talking about? So if it works for you, more power to you. But remember, if it works for you, cool, but you may not be able to convey your thoughts to other people that know a different form of the language, okay? So I hope that helps.
Okay, yeah, and he said he's just using that for himself. He doesn't want to show it to other people.
Very cool.
Do you think that's a harmful thing long term to do that when it's preventing you from learning kind of the standard way that you can communicate to other people?
I do. I think I do. Great question. I think that it's an issue of protocol. So kind of like what we're doing right here is just sort of my way that I do this, but and it works for me, which is cool. But do I have the ambition to get better and better and better at learning the universal language of music? Yes, and that's my overall goal. This process that I have is kind of like my own sort of way that I do behind closed doors, kind of like writing a day list. Some guy may have like an application for that where he's super efficient with it. For me, I've got to write it down kind of old-fashioned style. So I think that, yeah, as long as you understand that it is different, and as long as your goal is to get better and better and better at the language, what happened to me was I had my way of reading charts and doing things, and but I didn't know the name of like chords, and this is very common. This is very common. I didn't know the names of the chords I was playing, but I knew all my chords. I didn't know the names of the modes I was playing, but I knew all the modes. So I went to school, and I could play everything they were teaching. I just didn't know the name of it. I knew the person, I knew the face, I didn't know their name. So essentially what I did was I took my little method that I knew from gigging in bands and playing nonstop, and I slowly started learning how to put a name with a face. So school taught me, and private instruction and transcribing and just learning in general and ambition taught me how to, okay, I called this, that minor chord, but then I learned that it was A minor, or better yet, this chord. I learned this chord. I was like, that's the Cure chord. That's that Cure, the song Love Song by The Cure. That's that first chord. That's the Cure chord. So here I am, my entire career up to that point, calling that chord the Cure chord. People in my circle that played with me knew the Cure chord. You know what I'm saying? But when I left my little tiny bubble and I went into the big adult ocean known as the world, I realized that not everybody knows the Cure chord. But if I say to a professional musician, yo, this is A minor add 9, they're going to go, oh, cool, yeah, which voicing do you want to use? And you go, I'm using this one right here. And I go, the one that they use in the Cure song. And they go, oh, yeah, that one right there. So I think that your goal should be to take your process, especially if you believe in it and it works for you. Take your process and eventually, using a great site like Jamplay, if you guys see the thing about it, Jamplay actually does moderate what they post. It's correct. And if it's not correct, somebody's going to say something and they're on top of it. So if you go to teaching tools, you're going to find all your chords. You're going to find all your scales. I would make it a project and a goal for you to go to this site and start grabbing these things and going, okay, that's called this. I was calling it this, but I want to start calling it this now. So you just basically up the ante, and you really start kind of putting a name with a face with what you already know. And then over time, you may get very proud of yourself and find that, dude, I'm talking to this college professor and like I know what augmented means. Like I know what it sounds like, and we just had a conversation. That's a big step up from where I used to be. And then you start getting confident, then you get hungrier for it. Next thing you know, it's a feeding frenzy, and you are miles away from where you used to be.
Okay, that is, as far as I see, the only actual question we have right now. Oh, actually, Patrick419 says, I think ML means knowing the lexicon of music to communicate effectively? ?
If you, hey, you know what? That's a great example. You want to call it a lexicon? I'll call it a language. Awesome. You know what I mean? Like whatever floats your boat, however you get across the river. Some guys look from a major perspective. This is in the key of C major. You know what I say? I say it's in the key of A minor. Or a really savvy person goes, it's in the key of C major or A minor. You know what I mean? Or if you expect the people around you, or if you are in a situation where people are really savvy, you can just go A minor, and they're just gonna look at it however they want to look at it. You could even say it's in the key of G7, and they're gonna go, okay, so C major. But they're gonna look at you like, what? That's like saying we're gonna do a Phrygian jam. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But yeah, you want to call it a lexicon? Perfect. You say tomato, I say tomato. I say love seat, you say sofa. Excellent. Okay. So keep the questions coming, guys. This is really cool. Putting a name with a face. Remember, putting a name with a face. So we just talked about YouTube, using the tools available to us to be able to get to the bottom of things. Now, number 5, this is kind of a big one. And I hinted on this earlier, but I want to actually show you guys the 2 styles of chord that, and you can check this out in teaching tools. I put the 2 categories as pretty simple, where they're either open chords, aka I like to call them cowboy chords. Moo moo buckaroo, like, you know, open chords where you're playing with the open strings, or mobile chords. Mobile chords are your bar chords. Some people would just simply call it all the Cage system, but I want to call it open chords or cowboy chords, and then mobile chords, which is your bar chords. Okay. Now we get into the categories, and there's only 3. Remember, what is it? I want you to say it there in the room you're sitting in. Even though I can actually hear you. I can hear you across the world there. I hear you. I want you to say it. Major, minor, dominant. Major arpeggios, major scales. Minor arpeggios, minor scales. Dominant arpeggios, dominant scales. Major, minor, and dominant. So, as a checklist, and what I would like for you all to be able to do, if you really want to go through a quick process that'll probably take you a couple of weeks, if you're serious about it, we can go through this right now, is I want to go ahead and go and play the 7 chords of each chord family in open position. And I just want you to see how I organize this, and that way, if you want to go after this and you think that it's something that you want to do, remember, I want you to go get for yourself. Go get the food for yourself. You don't have to have somebody make it. You are an adult now. You can go, and you can go to teaching tools that JamPlay has provided for you, and you can find all this information. So right now, we're going to start with major open chords. And we're going to go we're using the C major scale because we're starting simple here, and here it goes. C, D, E, F. If you don't like bar chords, there's a really good F. If you're bar chord savvy, there's F. G, A major, B major, which is kind of a pain. Some guys do it like this. Some guys do it like this. And then we're back to C. So C, B, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right up the C major scale. That's not the harmonized C major scale. We're just using the C major scale to make sure that we're thorough and we cover all of our ground. All right, so let's take a look at the minor chords real fast. There's going to be a little bit of a difference. A few more bar chords than usual. We have C minor. Okay, open D minor. E minor. F minor. By the way, these bar chords in the minor situation, these are going to be your mobile chord forms. Oh, look at this. G's a whole step up. Bang, G. G minor. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So C, D, E, F, G, A minor, B minor, and then half step up, we got C minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, C minor, 2, 3, 4, D, E, F, moving up, G minor. So C, D, E, F, G, A minor, B minor, C minor. Okay. So now let's take a look at dominant chords real fast. C7, D7, E7, F7 if you want to do a bar chord. You could do G7 as a bar chord, or you can do the good old Merle Haggard G7. I don't even know if Merle Haggard plays G7s. A7, like the Beatles. Okay, there's a couple of different ways to play B7, so pick your path, really. There's a B7, or here's a B7. I'd probably go with this one just because you're going to be moving it around for the mobile stuff anyways. B. Back to C. Okay, so C7, D7, E7, F7, G7, A7, B, back to C. So we have just covered all the chords in major, minor, and dominant. So now what do we do? How do we hit accidentals? Like, what if there's a B flat? What if you find the root note going through this process? What if you find the root note and it's on like the 6th fret on the E string? Well, that's not A, it's not B, it's B flat. What do I do? This is where you got to use your mobile chords. A lot of guys talk about the Cage system, and I learned the Cage system, although I don't use it very much. If I had like a year to take off just to approach one thing, I would go master the Cage system because it truly is brilliant the way that it works. It makes you a thorough player. I just kind of came from the school of rock and roll and unfortunately went down that road, but I do often use the Cage system in ways and forms. But this is kind of like my perspective and my own way of a little small checklist of what you can use to kind of have in your tool belt right there the chord voicing. So here's how I would actually make it through and have the tools to be able to play accidentals. I'm going to go ahead and just break it down to these categories. Let's just take a look at major. And let's say that we're doing G major, for instance. Well, here's G, the root note. Okay. I want to be able to play a G major with a root note on the E string. I want to be able to play a G major with a root note on the A string. And I want to be able to play a G major with a root note on the D string. Okay, so, but also if I want to do a G minor, we know that there's the roots. There's G, G, G. Save all this stuff. Put it up in your memory, because if you keep building this, you're going to have a foundation and you're going to get better and better at it. So we got the G, now we just plug in the chord form. And this may look familiar. Remember the F major chord form? We'll look at that. There it is, bar chord. Remember that B major that we played? B major, that thing right there? Well, there's a root note. We can do it up here now. And there is G major, but it's up here. Okay, this one's tough. It comes from the Cage system. It's called the D bar form. I had to use it on this Broadway gig because we were playing a lot of E flat and B flat. This is a really hard one, but this is what it looks like. You don't have to use this, but I will if I have to. That's what it looks like. Notice you have this like D major form right here for the D major chord. They call that the D major bar form, and you can make it mobile by adding your own human capo right here. That's essentially what a bar chord is. It's a regular chord with a human capo, and you can move it around. So we have 3 different versions of a chord. Okay, so remember when we go back to YouTube and we go look and see how that guy played that thing, if we learn those 3 ways to play that chord, root note on the E, root note on the A, that totally trims down all the possibilities into a multiple choice test that gives us, you have 3 different answers. So now you can find out how to do stuff, okay? So I come over here now and I go, well, how do I make that G sharp or A flat? Well, if this is G, as you all probably know, sharp means to take up a half step. There it is. If you want G flat, that means take it down a half step. So now you have the ability to play. Here's what G minor looks like, by the way. There's G minor. What about G sharp minor? Well, there it is. And so now we have it. To go through real quick the other mobile chord forms, just if you want to see what they look like. Here's G minor. Here's G minor with the root note on the D string. And finally, here is G minor with a root note on the A string. Notice that these shapes, if you learn the chords in open position or as close to open position as possible, notice that these are not alien life form shapes. These are not crazy like Spock fingers. These are pretty common shapes, because we're talking about triads here. We're not talking about extended harmony. So here's a dominant version. G7, going up to the root note on the D string. G7, that's a really good one to play right there. And then finally there's a few ways you can do this. You can do G7 like this, and you can do G7 like this. Okay? So, that is the ultimate goal, I think, is to just at least know that information. You should learn the Cage system because it's really important. There's, I can't even remember, is it Nick? I think Nick does an incredible lesson on the Cage system. There's a couple of them out there that I've seen, and students have been like, oh, this is great. And seriously, I'm like, man, I wish I would have learned it that way. He breaks it down really awesome. So go look for all the Cage system lessons you could find on this website, and you're gonna find some good stuff. Learn that. But if you don't want to go that route, just try to get the major, minor, and dominant chord forms with root notes on the E, the A, and the D, and you're going to have enough in your tool belt to get the job done. You're going to have your hammer, your Phillips head screwdriver, your flathead screwdriver, and on the back of the hammer, you can pull out nails, and then you've got some sandpaper. That's all you need. The other guy over here's got crazy wacko toolbox with all these like futuristic tools where he's got like a nail gun and a compressor and all this crap, but you're old school, but you got what you need to get the job done because you're a different person than that guy. Your goals are different. You know what I mean? So, but also at the same time, you can diversify and become that guy and learn and get that certification and learn how to like work on the nail gun or something, and not shoot yourself in the leg by accident, which thankfully I haven't done. I don't touch power tools, by the way. Okay, so to kind of mix this up and sort of conclude this lesson with a quick idea, looking at the 2 examples from our chord progression bank. Once again, example 4 and 5. Let's look and see, using example 4 first. So that right there, we have A minor, C major, D, and then F. Let's see what that sounds like in a different region of the neck, because not only is this going to help you learn how to play other people's music, this is going to give you options when it comes to writing your own music. So here we go. So we have A minor. I can do this kind of C bar form. I like this thing, or G is a G bar form from the Cage system, but you can do this here. You don't have to, if you're a singer-songwriter and you're singing, you don't have to move your whole hand. You can just do this. But essentially, that's what we're doing. C major right there. D minor right here. And then we have, that's a lot different than this. Okay, you could even do pretty cool stuff like this. Here's another great example. This is more of an original idea for if you're writing music, but also knowing that you can take it up an entire octave like this. So A minor, C major, D minor, F major. So if you're in a cover band, you want to spice something up, you can play around up there. If you're playing a solo, I mean, what if you start the solo like, or better yet, sorry, I had to do it. Yeah, so that's what you can do. That's going to add some variety to what you're doing, but really we're searching for perspective. And remember, you're going to want to be able to go fend for yourself. You're not always going to have a mentor there to help you, And another thing that I've got a student, and he's one of my favorite dudes ever. His name is Zach, and he's at Belmont in Nashville, and we do like a lot of lessons, and I kind of just sort of give him a lot of my perspective without trying to come off like a curmudgeon, because you don't really want to take your experience and inflict somebody else with it. Not that I'm like a negative guy all the time or anything, but he has some frustration because Nashville is super popular right now, and everybody's kind of fake there. Like everybody's kind of like fake it till you make it. That's kind of college years. Like, oh yeah, man. Well, I wrote a song with Kanye West. I got a co-write with this guy, and I got a development deal with the Capitol Records and all this. And you're like. And then the next guy's like, well, man, I wrote this song for Taylor Swift. I got a co-write with Tom Petty, and I'm also on, Mercury Records. And he gets the guy over here, well, I've been working at Arista Records. I'm an intern. And you're like, does everybody work for a record label up here? Does everybody have co-writes? Like, what's going on here? And so we were kind of, he texted me. He's like, dude, I'm just kind of losing it. How do I bypass these jokers? I can't even find a photographer. And Zach, if you're watching this, I had to use you for an example because you're a great guy. And what you're asking me about is a totally relevant thing. And what I told him was, I was just kind of like, you know what, dude? Welcome to the business, dude. Welcome to the music industry. That is what it is. Most of your time is spent trying to find out if it's BS or not, trying to find out who's real and who's not, right? And one thing I told him, and this is what I've learned recently, guys. And to be honest, I'll be 100% honest with you. I wrote my record and did it all myself because I realized that was my only option. Because my main gripe with the way everything worked was, you have to compromise because this guy wants to do it this way, or this guy was completely faking it and wasting your time. He was all about shooting video for you, but then when he actually had to and you're paying him, but then he actually has to drive and do some work. Next thing you know, he's dropping off on you. So he's a sucker. He's fake. How do you find those guys are fake? And the whole point I'm trying to make to him, and I told him this, I said, you have to be able to operate on your own and do and be goal oriented and doing the things that you have to do to get the job done, even if it's not great. Because he's at the age, right? He's a brilliant guy. He's a songwriter too. He's at the age where I think he's at the age where he's finding out that if there's a task that you can take care of, you must take care of it yourself, because you cannot depend on the other guy to have the same goals as you. You know what I'm saying? And that's essentially what this lesson was all about. You must be able to go and fend for yourself. And you do have the tools provided to you by the technology that we have at our fingertips. Man, I mean, you know how I learned how to do sweep tap arpeggios? Off of a CD or a cassette. Well, I never really had cassettes, but I'm at the age where my older brother had cassettes, but I had to learn stuff off of a CD, or I didn't get to learn it. I had to go to the guitar shop. You know how to do a sweep arpeggio? That's what everybody's talking about. You don't know. You know how to do. And I remember my buddy John Mildrum was like, "Yeah, I think it's like this. It's that, but it's real fast because he couldn't do it like real fast." And so I went home and I came up with I can't even really remember it. I did this whack, and I started sweeping all the time, and I tried to figure it out. I started playing the record. I trusted what my buddy told me because he would never lead me astray. But even then, I questioned it, go back to the record, try to do it over. I mean, I spent hours doing this, and then guess what? Eventually, I got my hands around it. I got my mind around it, and I could do 20 different sweeps. I was just like the sweep master, just like every 16-year-old is. And that's really how I learned stuff early on before the internet. So I'm telling you right now, you give somebody every movie in the world, they're not going to know what they want to watch. You give somebody 3 options on an airplane, they're going to know exactly what they want to watch. You must put yourself in that situation, and you must focus and take away all the gazillion options you could do and go for what you have to do. And get used to, at this point forward, doing stuff for yourself and using what is at your fingertips to your advantage, okay? You want to learn how to play that Guthrie Govan lick? Get on YouTube or whatever you got and go look at it. It's right there in front of you. Guess what? You can even slow stuff down on YouTube now and bring it back up the pitch. So what's your excuse? Any questions?
There are no questions.
Ho!
You guys are hurting our feelings here.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Just give us a pity question.
Yeah, can we get a pity question?
Pity question. I see you guys watching. So just so you know, at the end of these sessions here, it can be general questions. It doesn't have to be about this lesson. If you're having trouble with anything, let us know. And if not, we will see you back here at 2 p.m. Mountain Time.
We got about
4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, we got about 2 or 3 minutes. We could do story time. Just Any questions?
No, and people are, some people's video is a little bit delayed, so they won't be hearing what we just said for a couple minutes.
Ah,
so.
gotcha. Well, I'll do this then. Here's what I'll do. I'll just give you one more quick round of advice. Don't take this too seriously. I'll say it, go okay, and then forget about it. The same stuff applies to arpeggios, scales, and triads. Remember that. If you want to learn something technical, I break it down the same way. I can probably break down a Broadway show the same way, and I can break down like a classical tune the same way if it has movements. But also remember, the internet is a good tool for you because some bands, I don't mean this in a bad way, some bands don't have progressions. Like, think about a band like Meshuggah, or a band like even like Periphery, or a band that is more technical. Some of them have like really rhythmic, it's kind of like a rhythmic idea. There's not exactly like a 1-4-5 in it. There's not a minor blues. This is especially where it's important to break down things in a list. So when I had to learn, one of the toughest things I did was learning the Unearth set to play on their U.S. tour in like 2009, and my job was to not bug them about how to play their stuff, just learn it and just show up and be able to play it. And I pride myself in being able to doing that. But in metal, there's like 20 ideas in one song. So I would actually be like, intro, Metallica riff 1, In Flames sounding thing 2. I would actually have a little description. So in my mind, I know what I can come back to. So do whatever it takes to succeed, and if you can do it by the rules that are already out there, if you can do it with a language that's already existing, try to adjust your method to eventually become that language, and you're going to be in great shape. But also remember, this is an important one, and we'll shut it down unless we have any questions. It's like chopping a tree. You start chopping that tree, and you lay into it with that first. And I actually have chopped a tree before. It took a lot of time. You chop that tree, you take that first strike, and literally your confidence just rolls out of your pant leg. It's gone. No confidence, right?
Is this what happens when you move to Canada? You immediately become a lumberjack?
Yeah, dude. But here's the thing. As soon as the lunch break comes, You come back and you've got a dent in that tree. The next day you keep going, and eventually that tree's going to fall down. And this is the same thing in life. This is just what a task is like. It's intimidating at first, and then you get busy with it, and it becomes a very small task.
We have a question. We
Oh.
did get a pity question
Oh.
from Patrick419. He says, "Hey, Amol, some teachers on JP despise the caged system. For some reason, the D's not there. Does Amol know why?"
I think I do. Yeah, I could take a real good stab at that one. You could say the same thing about me with modes. And I think that I think it's just because it's a different method. Some guys use like a big caged user is Joe Pass, and but there are other guys that don't use cage at all. So, and it's kind of an old school style of guitar, and a lot of people, a lot of teachers, we are kind of different animals because I make a lot of my I don't create a lot of my frustrations. I think a lot of my preference is based on what confuses students and what doesn't. So, for example, we have a running joke over here at Jamplay. If you want to clear out a room, just say the word modes. Oh, and I can't say it 2 more times because then all the cameras will break. If you say modes, I can't say it 1 more time now. The whole world comes to an end because the modes are very confusing because, you can learn the modes. I can teach you the modes, but how many times have you seen a guy actually apply the modes and like win a Grammy off of it? It's not really my cup of tea, the modes. I can teach it. I'm certified to teach it. I do use them sometimes, and I can most definitely analyze the modes. And are they important? Oh, yeah, they're very important. They really are. But that's not really the foundation of how I teach my scales. So I think when some teachers on Jamplay probably are not into the cage system, I'm positive they're certified to teach it. I just think that it's not their number one go-to thing for understanding how to function on the guitar. So that is a good question. I mean, you can say that once again, say the same thing about the M word. You can say the same thing about modes. Oh, still working with me because I think it confuses my students, and I still try. When somebody asks about it, I still humor them and I still try to get through to them. But it's weird. People get stressed out. Oh, what do I do? Ah, like somebody's chasing them or something with a machete. The modes are, it's technical and people can get their head around it, but I physically can't just point to a player like, look at this guy who's at Mixolydian scale. Man, he's murdering the Mixolydian scale. Because you know what? The truth be told, Yngwie Malmsteen probably is not thinking about the modes. He's just thinking about this is the scale, and I know all the inversions of that scale. Because really, it's an order of operation, and the cage system is an older school order of operation. So I hope that kind of answers your question there. Any more sympathy?
No, that's it. A lot of people have told me that they haven't been able to stay for the whole session, and they're going to watch the archive. So,
Okay.
we will see you guys whenever you actually watch this.
Yeah.
You missed your chance
Yeah.
to catch Amol live.
Man. All right, we're going to do something special for the next one. Get ready.
Yeah, you better be there. It's a secret.
Secret. Yeah, it's top secret.